Imagine the Roman Empire. It was huge, stretching from Britain to the Middle East. It was so big that one emperor found it impossible to manage alone. In the late 200s AD, Emperor Diocletian had a big idea. He decided to split the empire into two halves to make it easier to govern. There would be a Western Roman Empire and an Eastern Roman Empire. Each half would have its own ruler, but they were supposed to work together. This decision was a turning point. It set the stage for two very different futures. The western half, with its capital in Rome, would face many problems. But the eastern half was about to begin a long and fascinating story of its own. A few decades later, another emperor named Constantine the Great made an even bigger move. He saw that the future of the empire lay in the east. The east was wealthier, had more people, and was easier to defend. In 330 AD, he founded a brand new capital city. He chose an ancient Greek city called Byzantium. It was in a perfect spot, right on the strait that connects Europe and Asia. This location was a crossroads for trade and a natural fortress. Constantine rebuilt the city and named it New Rome. Soon everyone started calling it Constantinople, the city of Constantine. This new capital would become the heart of a powerful empire for over 1,000 years. Constantinople was designed to be magnificent. It had grand palaces, wide public squares, a giant arena for chariot races called the Hippodrome, and impressive churches. Constantine wanted it to be a Christian capital, a rival to the old pagan Rome. He filled it with art and treasures from all over the empire. The city was protected by massive walls on land and by the sea on three sides. It was a fortress that many would try to conquer, but few would succeed. The founding of Constantinople marked the beginning of a new chapter. The focus of the Roman world was shifting eastward, and a new identity was starting to form. While the old Rome was still important, its power was fading. Barbarian tribes were constantly attacking its borders, and its economy was in trouble. The West was becoming unstable and weak. In contrast, the East was thriving. Its cities were bustling centers of trade and culture. The Eastern emperors had more money and better armies. The split that Diocletian started and the new capital that Constantine built created two separate worlds. One was heading towards collapse, the other was just getting started, ready to carry the legacy of Rome into a new era. This Eastern Roman Empire would become known to history as the Byzantine Empire. By the year 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire had fallen. The last emperor in Rome was removed from power, and the city was overrun by Germanic tribes. This event is often seen as the end of the ancient world and the start of the Dark Ages in Europe. The West broke apart into many small warring kingdoms. Roads fell into disrepair, trade collapsed, and much of the old Roman learning was lost. It was a time of great chaos and change. Many people probably thought that the great story of Rome was finally over, but they were wrong. In the East, the Roman Empire was still very much alive and well. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantium, did not fall. It survived and even prospered. Why? There were several key reasons. First, its location was a major advantage. Constantinople was a natural fortress, very difficult to attack. Its strong walls kept invaders out for centuries. The empire also controlled important trade routes between Europe and Asia. This brought incredible wealth into its treasury. The emperors could afford to pay for a large professional army and a skilled navy. They could also pay off enemies with gold when fighting was not the best option. This combination of strong defenses and a strong economy was crucial for survival. Another reason for its survival was its smart and effective government. The Byzantines had a complex system of civil servants who collected taxes, ran the provinces, and kept the empire organized. This bureaucracy was a legacy from Rome, and it worked very well. The emperors had real power and could make decisions quickly. Unlike the West, where power had become fragmented, the East had a strong, centralized state. This stability allowed the empire to weather storms that would have torn other kingdoms apart. They were able to manage their resources, build public works, and maintain law and order across their vast territories. Finally, the Byzantines had a strong sense of who they were. They called themselves Romans, or Romaioi in Greek, and saw their empire as the true continuation of the Roman legacy. This shared identity gave them a powerful sense of unity and purpose. They were united by their emperor, their laws, and their Christian faith. While the West was collapsing into pieces, the East stood firm. It held onto the traditions of Rome while also developing its own unique culture. It was this resilience, wealth, and strong sense of self that allowed the Byzantine Empire to not only survive, but to become a brilliant civilization in its own right. In the 6th century, a remarkable emperor named Justinian I came to the throne. He was a man of immense ambition and energy. Justinian dreamed of restoring the Roman Empire to its former glory. He believed it was his sacred duty to reunite the lost Western territories with the East. He was not just a dreamer. He was a tireless worker who involved himself in every detail of government, from law to religion to war. His reign marked a golden age for the Byzantine Empire, a time of incredible achievements that left a lasting mark on the world. Justinian was determined to make his empire the most powerful and magnificent on earth. Justinian was not alone in his ambitions. By his side was his wife, Empress Theodora. She was one of the most remarkable women in history. Theodora came from a humble background, her father being a bear-keeper for the Hippodrome Circus. She had been an actress, which was a very low-status profession at the time. But Justinian fell deeply in love with her and changed the law so he could marry her. Theodora was intelligent, brave, and politically savvy. She was his most trusted advisor. At a critical moment when a massive riot broke out in Constantinople, Justinian's advisors told him to flee. It was Theodora who stood firm, declaring she would rather die an empress than live as a fugitive. Her courage saved the throne. One of Justinian's greatest achievements was his reform of Roman law. The laws were a mess, a collection of contradictory and outdated rules from centuries past. Justinian ordered a team of legal experts to gather all the laws, organize them, and create one clear, unified legal code. The result was the Corpus Juris Civilis, or the body of civil law. This massive work preserved the core principles of Roman law. It became the foundation for the legal systems of most modern European countries. It was a monumental achievement that brought order and justice to the empire and influenced the world for centuries to come. Justinian also launched an ambitious military campaign to reconquer the West. His brilliant general, Belisarius, won stunning victories. He took back North Africa from the Vandals, Italy from the Ostrogoths, and parts of Spain from the Visigoths. For a brief moment, the Mediterranean Sea was once again a Roman lake. At the same time, Justinian began a massive building program across the empire. His most famous project was rebuilding the main cathedral of Constantinople after it was destroyed in a riot. He created the Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom. With its gigantic dome that seemed to float on a ring of light, it was the greatest church in the Christian world and an architectural marvel unlike anything seen before. Christianity was the lifeblood of the Byzantine Empire. It was much more than just a religion. It was the foundation of their identity, their culture, and their politics. The emperor was not just a political ruler. He was seen as God's chosen representative on earth. His duty was to protect the Christian faith and the church. Religious debates were not just for priests and theologians. Everyone, from the shopkeeper to the soldier, had strong opinions about religious doctrine. Arguments about the nature of Christ could spill out from churches and into the streets, sometimes leading to riots. Faith was woven into the very fabric of daily life in Byzantium. One of the most dramatic religious conflicts in Byzantine history was the iconoclast controversy. For centuries, Christians had used icons, images of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints, in their worship. But in the 8th century, a group of emperors decided that this was wrong. They believed that worshipping images was a form of idolatry forbidden by the Bible. These emperors, known as the iconoclasts or image breakers, ordered all icons to be destroyed. This caused a massive uproar. Many people, especially monks and ordinary citizens, fiercely defended the use of icons. They believed the images were windows into heaven and helped them feel closer to God. The iconoclast period lasted for over 100 years and tore the empire apart. Churches were stripped of their beautiful mosaics and paintings. People who defended icons were persecuted and some were even executed. It was a bitter civil war fought with words and violence. The defenders of icons, called iconodules or icon lovers, argued that images were essential for teaching the faith to people who could not read. Eventually, the iconodules won. In 843, the use of icons was officially restored, an event still celebrated in the Eastern Orthodox Church as the triumph of orthodoxy. The conflict showed just how deeply religion mattered to the Byzantines. This passion for faith also led to a growing rift between the Church in the East and the Church in the West. The Pope in Rome and the Patriarch of Constantinople were the two most important leaders in Christianity. Over the centuries, they grew further apart. They disagreed on many things: the power of the Pope, the exact wording of the creed, and different religious practices like whether priests could marry. The two churches also had different languages, Latin in the West and Greek in the East. This cultural and theological divide deepened until 1054, when a major dispute led to the Pope and the Patriarch excommunicating each other. This event, known as the Great Schism, created the split between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church that still exists today. For most of its long history, the Byzantine Empire was, well, surrounded by enemies. It had to fight wars on two fronts at the same time. To the east, there was the powerful Persian Empire, and later on all sorts of Arab and Turkic armies. Meanwhile, to the north and west, the Byzantines had to deal with Slavs, Avars, Bulgars, and other groups who were constantly pushing against their borders in the Balkans. Survival, honestly, depended on military strength. The Byzantines really became masters of defense, strategy, and of course diplomacy. They built this impressive network of massive fortresses all across their lands, and they kept a highly trained, disciplined army. Being a soldier was actually a respectable and professional career, which was pretty different from a lot of other medieval kingdoms out there. Now, the city of Constantinople itself was without a doubt the ultimate fortress. Its defense relied on the incredible Theodosian walls, a triple line of fortifications that stretched for miles across the landward side of the city. These walls were an engineering marvel, with a moat, an outer wall, and then a massive inner wall with tall towers. For 1,000 years they stood as a barrier against countless sieges. Any army that tried to attack the city was met with a stubborn and well-organized defense. The walls of Constantinople didn't just protect the capital, they safeguarded the very heart of the empire. This allowed Byzantine culture and the economy to flourish, even when the borders were under constant threat. But the Byzantines had another trick up their sleeve, a secret weapon that gave them a huge advantage in naval battles. It was this mysterious and terrifying substance called Greek fire. Basically, it was a chemical liquid that could be shot from tubes mounted on the fronts of their ships. As soon as it hit air or water, it would ignite. And you couldn't put it out with water. It would just burn right on the surface of the sea, setting enemy ships ablaze. The recipe for Greek fire was such a closely guarded state secret that eventually it was lost to history. This fearsome weapon saved Constantinople from massive Arab naval sieges more than once, and it earned a legendary reputation among the empire's enemies. Beyond just military might, the Byzantines were also masters of diplomacy and intelligence. They understood that fighting wasn't always the best answer. Their emperors were incredibly skilled at playing their enemies against each other, sometimes paying one tribe to attack another or creating alliances through strategic marriages. They even sent missionaries to convert neighboring peoples to Orthodox Christianity, turning them into cultural allies. Plus, they had a pretty sophisticated network of spies gathering information about their enemies' plans and weaknesses. So it was this combination of strong walls, a professional army, a secret weapon, and really clever diplomacy that allowed the Byzantine Empire to survive for centuries in such a dangerous world. The history of the Byzantine Empire was not a straight line of success. It was a long series of dramatic ups and downs, with periods of great power and prosperity followed by times of crisis and near collapse. After the golden age of Justinian, the empire lost many of his newly conquered territories. It was weakened by a terrible plague and constant wars with the Persians and Arabs. In the 7th century, the new religion of Islam exploded out of Arabia, and Arab armies conquered vast Byzantine lands, including Syria, Egypt, and North Africa. The empire shrank dramatically, fighting for its very survival against this powerful new foe. It seemed as though Byzantium was doomed, but the empire was resilient. After these dark times, it entered a new period of revival, From the 9th to the 11th centuries, under a line of strong rulers from the Macedonian dynasty, Byzantium bounced back. The emperors reorganized the army and pushed back their enemies. They reconquered lost territory in the Balkans from the Bulgars and pushed the Arab frontier back in the east. Trade flourished once again, and the cities grew wealthy. Art and learning experienced a renaissance. Missionaries from Constantinople, like the brothers Cyril and Methodius, traveled north to convert the Slavic peoples. They created the Cyrillic alphabet, which is still used in Russia and other Slavic countries today to translate the Bible. This period of strength, however, was followed by another decline. In the 11th century, new enemies appeared. From the east came the Seljuk Turks, a nomadic people who defeated the Byzantine army at the crucial Battle of Manzikert in 1071. This defeat was a disaster. It opened up the heartland of the empire in Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey, to Turkish conquest. The Byzantines lost their main source of soldiers and food. At the same time, Norman adventurers from the west were attacking Byzantine territories in Italy. The empire was once again caught between enemies, and its power began to crumble. Desperate for help, the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos sent a plea to the Pope in Rome. He asked for Western knights to help him fight the Turks. This request would have unforeseen and catastrophic consequences. The Pope saw it as an opportunity to unite Christendom and launched the First Crusade. While the First Crusaders did help recapture some territory, they also brought a new and unpredictable force into the region. The relationship between the Byzantines and the Western Crusaders was filled with suspicion and mistrust. This fateful call for help set the stage for one of the greatest betrayals in the empire's history and a turning point in its long, slow decline. The Crusades, which began as a call for help, ended up being a disaster for the Byzantine Empire. The relationship between the Greek-speaking Byzantines and the Latin-speaking Western Knights was always tense. The Byzantines saw the Crusaders as rude, uncultured barbarians, while the Crusaders saw the Byzantines as deceitful and untrustworthy. The breaking point came during the Fourth Crusade in 1204. A group of Venetian merchants and French knights, originally intending to go to Egypt, diverted their mission. They were promised great riches if they helped a deposed Byzantine prince reclaim his throne. When the promised payment did not materialize, the Crusaders turned their fury on Constantinople itself. The sack of Constantinople in 1204 was a moment of unimaginable horror. For 3 days, the Christian Crusaders looted, burned, and destroyed the greatest city in Christendom. They stole priceless relics and artworks, melted down bronze statues for coin, and desecrated churches, including the magnificent Hagia Sophia. It was a betrayal that shattered the Byzantine Empire. The empire was carved up into small Latin kingdoms, and for over 50 years a Latin emperor sat on the throne in Constantinople. The Byzantines managed to hold on in exile, eventually recapturing their capital in 1261. But the empire that returned was a pale shadow of its former self. It was poor, small, and broken. For the next 2 centuries, the weakened Byzantine Empire struggled to survive. It was surrounded by powerful enemies, including the Serbs and Bulgars in the Balkans, and most importantly, a new and powerful Turkish group, the Ottomans. The Ottomans were skilled warriors, and they steadily conquered Byzantine lands in Anatolia and then crossed into Europe. One by one, Byzantine cities fell. The empire shrank until it was little more than the city of Constantinople itself and a small part of Greece. The emperors traveled to Western Europe, desperately begging for help, but their pleas were largely ignored. The great city was alone and vulnerable. The final act came in 1453. The young and ambitious Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II, gathered a massive army to conquer Constantinople once and for all. He brought with him enormous cannons, a new technology that could smash through the city's ancient walls. The last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI Palaiologos, led a heroic but hopeless defense with a tiny force of Byzantines and a few hundred Italians. After a 53-day siege on May 29, 1453, the Ottoman soldiers breached the walls. The last emperor died fighting, and the city fell. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the 1,000-year-long Byzantine Empire. The great sequel to Rome had finally come to an end. At its greatest extent, under the Emperor Justinian in the mid-6th century, the Byzantine Empire was a vast and powerful state. It was a true Mediterranean superpower. Its territories wrapped around the sea, echoing the glory of the old Roman Empire he so admired. In the east, the empire included what is now modern-day Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, and Jordan. It also held the wealthy and ancient province of Egypt. These eastern lands were the economic and spiritual heartland of the empire, filled with bustling cities, centers of learning, and important religious sites. This was the core from which Byzantine power and influence spread. Moving west, the empire's reach was equally impressive during its peak. The Balkan Peninsula was a key region containing modern-day Greece, Albania, North Macedonia, Serbia, Bulgaria, and parts of Romania. Greece, in particular, was central to the empire's identity, as Greek became its official language and its culture was built on ancient Hellenic traditions. Justinian's reconquest temporarily added even more territory. The empire controlled all of Italy, a large part of the North African coast, including Tunisia and parts of Libya and Algeria, and even a slice of southern Spain. For a brief, shining moment, the Byzantine eagle's shadow once again fell across the shores of the entire Mediterranean. Of course, this vast empire did not last. Over the centuries, its borders were constantly shifting. It lost its eastern provinces to the Arabs, its African lands, and eventually its Italian holdings. For much of its later history, the empire consisted mainly of the Balkans and Anatolia. After the disastrous Battle of Manzikert in 1071, it lost most of Anatolia to the Seljuk Turks, a blow from which it never fully recovered. By the time of its final fall in 1453, the once mighty empire had shrunk to little more than the city of Constantinople and its immediate surroundings, a tiny island in a sea of Ottoman power. Looking at a map of the modern world today, it is staggering to see how many countries have a history that was shaped by the Byzantine Empire. The list is long and diverse. It includes Italy, Spain, Turkey, Greece, Egypt, Syria, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Albania, North Macedonia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, Tunisia, and Libya. In all these places, the legacy of Byzantium can still be found. It might be in the form of ancient ruins, beautiful Orthodox churches, legal traditions, or even in the local art and culture. The empire's reach was immense, and its footprint on the map of history is far larger and more widespread than many people realize. Why should we care about an empire that disappeared over 500 years ago? The answer is that the Byzantine Empire left behind a legacy that continues to shape our world today. One of its most important contributions was the preservation of knowledge. While Western Europe was going through the Dark Ages, Byzantine scholars carefully copied and studied the great works of ancient Greece and Rome. They preserved the writings of philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, the plays of Greek dramatists, and the scientific and medical texts of the ancient world. When this knowledge flowed back into Western Europe during the Renaissance, it helped spark a revolution in thinking. The influence of Byzantium on art and architecture is immense and unmistakable. The stunning mosaics, with their golden backgrounds and solemn spiritual figures, created a unique artistic style that influenced religious art for centuries. The architectural marvel of the Hagia Sophia, with its massive central dome, inspired the design of countless churches and mosques across the world. The style of Orthodox Christian icons, with their specific rules and deep symbolism, is a direct inheritance from Byzantium. This artistic legacy is a visible reminder of the empire's deep spirituality and its quest to represent the divine in a beautiful and powerful way. The empire's influence is also deeply embedded in religion and law. The Great Schism of 1054 permanently divided the Christian world, creating the Eastern Orthodox Church. Today, hundreds of millions of people in Russia, Greece, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East belong to churches that trace their roots, their liturgy, and their theology directly back to Constantinople. Similarly, Justinian's code of law did not die with the empire. It was rediscovered in the West and became the basis for the legal systems of many modern nations in Europe and beyond. The principles of justice and organization laid out by Justinian's lawyers are still with us. The Byzantine Empire was the great sequel to Rome, a vibrant and resilient civilization that stood for over 1,000 years. It was a shield that protected Europe from Eastern invasions for centuries. It was a bridge that carried the torch of classical learning through the darkness. It created a unique and brilliant culture that blended Roman government, Greek thought, and Christian faith. From our laws and our art to the very map of modern religion, the echoes of Byzantium are all around us. It is the forgotten empire that we should all remember, a crucial chapter in the story of our world.